Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm John. I'm your host. Welcome to Is Gaming Open for All? My mistake from 3 years ago that unfortunately Dave and Simon and Duncan held me to. So, topic for a panel today is basically, is gaming open for all and how do we make it open for all? And I'm going to introduce you to my panellists. If you want to introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Hello, yes, hi, I'm Elaine Lithgow. I am, many hats. So I'm a producer at Cubicle 7, Tabletop Gaming Games. We make various licensed IPs, Warhammer, Lines, Doctor Who, and all that sort of jazz, along with a bunch of own IP stuff. I'm also a designer, producer at Team Digisprite, which is our own independent board game company. You can find us downstairs in the hall. We're selling wonderful games for everybody. That's me. Is that enough?
That's enough, yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Oh, I had to go first, so.
Yeah, that's more than enough. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brian. I run Stout Stoat. I describe Stout Stoat as like an accessible publishing imprint for role-playing games, so that we make entry-level games that are great for new players of all ages as well as experienced players. But we also work specifically with entry-level or early career people, so early career writers, illustrators, giving them the professional experience they need to get into the industries they're really excited about. I'm also queer and disabled, so cool.
Hi, I'm Lloyd. I came for the Iron Brew. Apparently it was really good, so that's what I'm down for. I'm just a guy. I'm the black guy you see at role-playing conventions. That's my job, I guess. That's it, really. Carry on.
Yeah, so like I said, basically this panel is one question. It's the laziest panel ever. I've only got one question, which is gaming open for all? And as we, unfortunately, at the moment, we all know there are many barriers that make gaming not open for all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our panelists, if they don't mind, start off by sharing any experience they might have had that shows how we can all learn to make gaming better and how we can make it accessible. So if anyone's got anything, any barriers they've come across in the past that they think we could...
Are you just asking a bunch of panelists to gripe about the games industry?
Well, anyway, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Basically, I'm here for the evidence.
All right. Okay. Cool. All right. Remember, we're nixing names and all that stuff. Gosh, damn.
I've got something.
Yeah, go for it.
Has anyone played Great Western Trail?
Yes.
Great game, right? Really cool, big board game. You move stuff around. You're trying to get some cattle in there, do some cool things. When they released the second edition, they changed the enemies that you have to basically slow you down. You have to pay them off from I hope it sounds like teepees, which is Native American teepees, to hard, badass-looking cowboys who were badass-looking, by the way. They're kind of hard. I'm feeling it. And the complaint that came up from a lot of people from that game, they were going, "Why are you erasing culture by putting it in? It's not historically accurate." Which brings up to the reason why I think tabletop gaming is not open for all, is this attraction we have to the phrase historically accurate as an excuse to be racist, sexist, homophobic, misogynistic, all of that in gaming. It's so easy to do a fantasy show or a TV thing and not have it in, but people put it in specifically because the excuse they have is, we want to make it historically accurate. We don't want to erase culture. But we're pretending to be dragons. I'm literally shooting fireballs out of my eyes. Why are we going through so much trouble to change things to be historically accurate when we're clearly in the world of make-believe? If we could bring things to a standard where we could make the world we're in better than the one we are now, and then turn it grimdark, it'd be a better world. But I don't know.
Yeah, to add to that, historically accurate as a term is, I guess, more 20th century Victorian accurate. They did so much retconning of history and destruction of evidence to get across a specific narrative they had for looking at indigenous peoples, different cultures, highland clearances, whatever they wanted to justify, they found a way for it. So when people think of historically accurate, what you're thinking of is propaganda that's been put into historical circulation by some old white dudes like 100 years ago. So it's not that accurate.
So the question then I have on that is, how do you avoid that pitfall?
A lot of research, and it's really complicated. I mean, I'm working on a project right now called Carved in Stone that's meant to be recontextualizing 7th century Pictlam, so late 7th century, 650 to like 690. And it's really complicated to look at a culture where not a lot of people wrote stuff down. It's all carved into stone, hence the name. But it's not like, oh, dear diary, today I ate a boiled egg and a bit of salmon I fished out of a river, because that'd be really easy for understanding diet, but they didn't do that. A lot of our understanding of the past comes from the context of the people who look at it. So a lot of the people who had access to history recently, if we're looking at, say, like the Pictish period, they tended to be, say, ex-army folks who retired after the 1950s and all of the World War I and World War II stuff. And we're like, what do I do now? Well, I'm going to dig some holes in the ground, make some trenches, find some stuff, and I'm going to say it was a military encampment and recontextualize all of the things that I find to be about war, because that's what I know. We all have biases, but the people who had access to history put their biases above everyone else's, and now that's all we think about. So we find something like, how do we kill someone with this? How was this a defensive structure? We don't think like, oh, was this just a playhouse? Or was this somewhere nice, or like a bakery or something like that? So yeah, accessibility is a really complicated subject if we're talking about history, because, oh God, it's who has access to it, who's telling the story.
My favorite stories around those are always, predominantly you're looking at a lot of cis white dudes digging up stuff and saying it's like this, and there's a bunch of these relics. What was it? It was the Roman dodecahedron shape. The knitting thing, yes. Yeah. And they're like, we can't, a bunch of people sitting around a table can't figure out what this is for. And then like a wee old lady's like, it's for knitting gloves. Yeah. And they're like, what? And they thought it was of religious significance or whatever. And then, oh, these are really weirdly accurate calendars that, lay out the months and everything, but they had no reason to track months. And then all the women are just like,
exactly 28 days every time.
Possibly, but no, it must be of religious significance and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, that's how the people that are in a field predominantly shape the norms of that field, which in turn has like a feedback loop where it makes it harder for marginalized individuals to break into that field, because the very foundational texts that say this is how this field works, this is how this works, or you have to fight at every step, because it's all based on this like old bullshit. Am I allowed to say bullshit?
No, honestly,
Who's
trust me.
Stop us.
No. Your moderator actively encourages bad language.
Great.
Sorry,
well,
Joe.
We are in Scotland. We use curse words.
Does not.
All right, we'll keep that in mind.
Pay for every F-bomb.
Right.
I mean, I actually am. I would say I am the lucky one in that sense, because for all intents and purposes, I'm well aware of the fact that I present as the most straight white dude. That's me. I mean, you walk in and go, oh, there's the straight white gamer. And there's several very offensive stories. I won't tell on that front. It'll get me in trouble. But so for me, the challenge I always had is the fact that I sometimes actively look out of my way to go, I'm going to challenge that, because I'm in the position where I can, because everyone makes an assumption and goes, oh, John, it's just John. But I'm like, actually, no, you're making an assumption based on an appearance, but that appearance is how I choose to look. It doesn't represent me in any way, shape, or form. Just so happens that you can't really hide bald very well unless you spend a lot of money. Don't bother.
If I may come in on that subject,
Also,
specifically your baldness. If I
I
come
know
on
it's
that
shiny,
subject,
isn't it? It's shiny.
there is the gamer look that became the stereotype for a lot of the time that I was into the industry and into the hobby, which is white guy, bearded, with glasses, maybe or maybe not nerdy t-shirts. I mean, I'm not saying this
There's
room...
no maybe not.
I'm not... for those listening later on, the room is full of quite a number of that, but it's not all of them. I'm not saying that's the only look anymore, because it used to... I started coming to gaming conventions in 2005, and I sort of watched it slowly change, because the biggest problem I had was, why would I go to a gaming convention when no one there looks like me? And there's a lot of arguments online about, well, it's not our job to do it. It's not our, because it kind of is a little. And the thing that drove me to keep going was I wanted to challenge that and go, I want to try and be there so other people looking in would see it's more welcoming. The space didn't make it easy for me to come in. It didn't really. Most role-playing books would have a white person at the cover. Most role-playing books would talk about white culture with white things and all that. I am a black, for the audience watching online, I'm a black guy. I just want you to know that. And it's always a struggle for me to insert myself in because our culture's been changing. Our TV's been changing. We have a more diverse cast on TV and video games and everything else. And gaming in the last 5 years has been trying to twist that. I mean, when I saw a black guy in a D&D 5th edition book, I was like, oh my God, they were the villain. But that's not the point. We were getting somewhere, okay? It's
but let's be clear. Villains have the best jobs.
Yes, but I'd like to see a hero every now and then. And it's the change of the industry. And I feel that the industry changing and adding more, for the use of a different word, color to their books is what's making the place feel a bit more coming in. I can't speak for women being allowed in the industry. I would love to, but I'm not an expert at that. But I can tell you that it feels better for me coming in. It's just not quite there yet.
That's the, as somebody who does organise a tabletop convention, and I've always come at this, as a group, we've always come at this from a really simple perspective, was what makes your money any different? At the end of the day, I need you all to buy tickets, and I don't care, just give me your money. And what I don't get is why anyone puts that amount of energy into caring about who they get their money from. As a publisher or a developer or a trader, exactly the amount of effort required to stop somebody being involved far outweighs the amount of effort required just to be there.
Brian, you got this one.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't think capitalism is an intrinsic human quality.
No, it isn't. But right now,
so that sort of argument of, oh, anybody's money is good money, I don't think it cuts to the heart of it. Humans, I believe, love to in-group and out-group, like to feel like identified towards something and also be able to differentiate themselves. And a lot of what causes accessibility problems in any context, the pushback against it, that is this sense of, oh, well, we did it like this, and that's my identity, and this is how I feel, and we should do it like this because that's always how we've done it, and it just gets very circular. And when you look self-reflectively at why we do things the way we do, there's often very little reason why we do it like that, other than it was the person who was in the room who made the decision at the time. If you're thinking about history, then it's, a white military general who's retired from the army, went and dug some holes and found some stuff and went, cool, what if it's like this? And now we're like, well, everything is now like this. It has to be like this. But there's no reason to. It was just one guy or two guys. Now we have more people in the room and we now have more opinions. If we look at, say, how rules are in role-playing games, well, you have to have THAC and you have to have an armor class of 27 plus 9, and it has to have this and 7 modifiers, and, well, that's because one person did it like that. And yes, we love a trend and we love things and doing things, but we can have change as well. And when it comes to artwork as well, well, you have to have a white guy on the front because the white guys are the good guys. Well, let's reflect on that. Why do we have it like that? Because one person did it, we don't have to do it like that. So when it comes to this sense of, well, anybody's money is good money, I think we need to rephrase that to be like, well, we want people in the room, we want to share this experience. Why do we feel so tied to this specific way of doing something? To sort of move the conversation towards another form of accessibility. It's 2 years ago now, the whole pandemic ago, but there was a huge kickback against this 5th edition supplement called, I think it was like the combat wheelchair. And essentially it was, if you want to be in a wheelchair, here's the aesthetics of how you do it. And sometimes it can topple over, but sometimes it doesn't. And people were like, you can float upstairs for free. This is insane. You've ruined Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to kill myself. It was insane. The reaction was so out of proportion of just, dude's in a chair now, as opposed to dude isn't in a chair. Like, there was no difference to the gamelay.
And those are the same people who quite happily would take their broomstick and put it in their handy haversack of storage.
Yeah, or any other kind of, they're not looking back reflectively and thinking, why do I feel like this? It's because, we didn't do it like that before. Why didn't we do it like that? Because no one had thought to do it like that. Well, that's a more complicated question of why did we exclude people, but the overall is we didn't do it like that. We can do it like that now. Let's do it like that now.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for, in general, most of what we're working in is, we're creating content for people to enjoy as a hobby during their downtime, and questioning norms takes energy. It takes self-reflection. I always say one of the funniest experiences I had was years ago sitting at a gaming store and mentioning, that we were playing away, and mentioning that I didn't really feel comfortable in this atmosphere. There were other game stores I'd rather be in. And the person sitting directly across from me looks me dead in the eye and says, "Why do you not feel comfortable?" And behind me was a life-size, like, chainmail bikini pin-up gal doing, like, the big poses and everything, like the tits and ass, like, marble stuff. And I'm just like, can't quite figure. But it's, it takes effort and energy to self-reflect, to reflect on, like, your industry as a whole. And I think it's one of the reasons why so many hobbies feel strangely resistant, because folk are there to blow off steam, to relax. A lot of the time they're not even thinking about what's around them, let alone willing to put in the energy to do that, because they're like, I just want to blow off steam. I don't want to have to think about this and everything. So it's definitely, it's a hard steering and a very slow steering ship, because the crew are asleep at the helm. Is that where the analogy was going? I don't know.
The crew have done a runner, not even asleep at the helm.
May I jump back on your idea of why would you not want more people to give you money?
Yeah, genuinely.
There is a community that, okay, I'm going to preface this with some big boy moves. Watch yourselves. Watch yourselves. Everything is politics. I just want to put it out. Okay? Everybody cool with that? Are we cool? Excellent. Yes. Cool. If anyone says, don't put politics in my gaming, tell them to F off. See, I said F off for you. F off. Just tell them.
Lloyd meant fuck off.
That wasn't me.
Wow, John. Wow.
My pleasure.
When you build a community, you want to build a community of people. You usually build a community of people you think are more like-minded, who will bring other people onwards to come in there. For a very long, sorry, I am Bruce getting down my throat. For a very long period of time, the majority of people who would attend conventions and buy your stock and buy all that stuff would be predominantly white people. I was going to speak from one perspective. If there is a way that you can attract more people in to buy it, you will do whatever it takes to go, including aligning with their politics. So if you have a bunch of people who are very much on one alignment of a way of thought, saying keep politics out of my gaming, going all in for like new TSR style, you would advertise to them because that's who you want to get in, because you know they'll buy your product. And as such, would start the grift. We had, Tyrrell Year of Lord 2016 onwards, and before and after, we had that lovely OSR movement that started to build up, where things were becoming, I don't use the word conservative, I'm going to use the term alt-right and just leave it at that, where we had a lot of build-up of this idea of keep politics out of my gaming, also all women should wear chainmail bikinis, also we like reading Mythrog because we're terrible people, also look at all the blood, look at all the gore, let's attract more people for that to come in. And that grift kept going until something close to 2018, when everyone kind of started to wake up, thank Christ. And with the world changing as it is and becoming more acceptable, you can see that grift going down. But that's a reason why people would be that way, be that incredibly close-minded in the tabletop gaming industry. It's still there even today.
So the hard thing is, how do we fight that? Because it is a fight, in many respects, I would say.
Can I suggest swords?
Yes, you can.
I like to say that I don't suggest swords. That's just, I'm not a big fan of. I can't use swords. They're kind of dangerous. Someone will get hurt. Please, no, I can't.
The intent is that they are kind of dangerous.
Okay.
So, to go back to the question I was trying to ask there badly, is these are obviously examples of obstacles, and where we can all see areas that need improvement. There's some fixes that we can all see they're obvious, but is there anything you would say is a less obvious, I want to say fix or solution, that we can all achieve, simple measures that probably it's a case of everyone does a little thing, and that could help the avalanche build.
May I do a tiny back pat on this and say thank you for having a gender neutral toilet?
Yeah,
Is that okay? I was genuinely impressed by that. We don't even have that dragging me, and thank you very much for that. And it's small things. I can't tell you that here is how you get black people to play more role playing games. I can't do that. But I can tell you that small starting steps and working your way up to getting that in there. A gender neutral toilet is an easy start to put down to 1. Keeping your language neutral is also a really easy way to keep that for that. Your advertising, the people you invite in, the panels you have, the things that you want to pull people in to go for that. That's what I would say is your starting steps to bringing more people in. But I can't give you a perfect answer because I'm only human.
Well, the thing there is obviously is that every answer we get is a bit of a perfect solution, but a perfect solution is something that we will never have because we are just basically flawed, unfortunately.
I think there is a risk of sometimes feeling like there is anything that you, the individual, can do to snap your fingers and say, I'm going to fix this. Sometimes, in my humble experience, the most important thing is to recognize I cannot speak to this experience. I cannot speak to what is going to be best for a marginalized group. So I'm going to step out of the way. I'm going to signal boost the people who actually have the experience to say, this is what's going to make us more comfortable. This is what's going to make us more accepted and whatnot. Because, the majority already take up a lot of oxygen in the room, I guess is what you want to say. So if the majority all begin to start screaming, well, I have a solution for you. If the marginalized groups are still not getting their say in, so it's it's still going to be tainted or sort of steered more towards what the norm think is the solution, which is maybe sometimes not that. So I think that's the one I try to keep in mind a lot, is like sort of just what's the term? Stay in your lane. It sounds so aggressive when I say stay in your lane, but
it's about making a space and actually making that space and keeping that space available. If you immediately go, look, I'm opening the door and then closing it straight away, that defeats the purpose of opening the door in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'd come in and say that reframing how we think about accessibility is quite important as well. Accessibility isn't something that we do for some nebulous, perfect ideal of some minority. It's for everybody, and it benefits you as much as it benefits everyone else around you. To kind of give an example, there are papers coming out right now that are suggesting that the majority of the world coming out of COVID is going to be disabled. Either they have long COVID, or they have PTSD, or they've lost people and are grieving. It's a massive shift around the entire world. And it can happen again when you've got monkeypox going on. There's more, people aren't changing, or governments aren't taking proper measures to protect everyone and to deal with the sorts of problems that are coming up. So if we think about accessibility as not just helping someone in a wheelchair, but helping you as well, and putting safety measures in place for you in the future when you eventually become disabled, or eventually explore some other part of yourself, or have space for that, and that more sort of not just black and white understanding of, oh, I'm me and that's a disabled over there or something like that. It changes how you do things. So to then get a specific example, if you're in a Zoom call, then having subtitles, auto caption. Yeah, sometimes I miss something and it's really nice to be able to read that back. I don't necessarily have to have a disability to appreciate that, but that is an accessibility measure that makes things better. To then take that sort of analogy of if it helps me and it can help everybody, there's no single solution, as Lloyd, you've said, that's ever going to fix everything. But so long as you're thinking of how you can help the people around you, and that means everybody around you, you don't have to do everything. As long as you're doing something and someone else is doing something else, we can all do everything, if that makes sense.
I wish I'd done this over Zoom. I could have sat like that for an hour. lost my train of thought there, sorry.
Take your time.
Okay.
So actually, thinking on that front, before I forget, when we were setting up Tabletop Scotland 7-8 years ago, we reached out to a fairly diverse group of friends, fellow gamers, etc. We asked similar questions, what would you like to see? And 99% of the feedback we got was, oh, lots of role-playing tables. Very few people actually said to us, I would like a gender-neutral toilet, or I would like to make sure there's wheelchair access. But what we soon discovered was, after that point, once we'd got that I want RPG space out there, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons, what we started then getting was quite insistent feedback that actually, I want to be there, here's what I need for you to facilitate. Hence why we have a gender-neutral toilet, because somebody actually contacted us and said, could you tell me if you've got gender-neutral facilities? So we did a tour of the building, found that toilet and stuck a gender-neutral sign on it and went, that's what that is. And it only took one person asking one question, and we went, well, that's an easy accommodation. So for us, doing that, we've always thought, right, if we ask the question, we will get an answer. We won't always be able to provide the answer, but at the very least, we can ask the question. So on that point, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panel?
What a segue.
I know.
You're a
That was
professional.
actually beautiful. I'm
Yeah.
I'm amazed. That was incredible.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Hello, I'm Sean.
Sean, is the microphone coming towards you?
Thank you.
So you were saying earlier about making space, and I think one of the things that's really effective is just like being able to essentially like platform other people and let those people come through. In each of your cases, who do you think is the most interesting person to listen to if we're thinking about either accessibility or thinking about the way in which we can kind of like remove obstacles, or even just enthuse groups of people that previously have felt left out in this case?
Well, I'll give you my really quick and easy answer. Is I don't multitask very well, and I will tell you that. I like doing one thing at a time. So for me, the answer is whoever I'm speaking to right then is probably the most interesting person on the planet. If that person says to me, John, this is my idea or this is my thought, then frankly, I'll be on board with that until I've done it, or I realise I can't do it. So for me, and I always find that if I'm able to help that individual solve a problem they've come to me with that they want help with, or even just be the person they've asked the question to, and I'm going to say, look, I don't know, but I will help you. That's it. I'm interested, because I've always found if I do that, I can almost in every instance find other people that I've been able to help benefit with that. So I'm always interested in one person at a time. It works for me. You know, I'm not the big thinker. That's Dave's job.
Yeah, straight up, openly, I am horrendous with names. If you were to ask me, like, I remember a lot of like projects now. Like I remember the combat wheelchair and everything. Like, heck yes, crap. What was her name? Yes, Sarah Mustang. There we go. Absolutely terrible when it comes to names, and I recognize people. The other problem as well is that one of the weird things with obviously living and operating in Scotland is that you're outside of that London sphere where you physically meet a lot of people. I mean, heck, 2011 census says Scotland is 96% white. So, you know, so you're outside of like that sort of bubble of like sort of these places where a lot of people can meet and interact. So I also know a lot of people by Twitter handles and avatar images. And I'm like, I love, you know, I like what you're saying and everything sounds good and whatnot. So I will signal boost, go, signal boost.
That picture of a cat makes very good points.
Oh yeah. Jorts is a left-wing rallying cry.
Yes.
Who would have thought the meme, you buttered jorts, would become a radical leftist rallying figure? But I am here for it, and this is the world we live in, so...
Sorry, but honestly, at that point, if there's any one individual group of things on the planet that could be called anarchists, it's cats.
You know what? You're not wrong.
No, they're libertarian. No, they think they're individual, but they're actually being fed by other people.
Why does every panel I go to turn into talk about cats?
Because cats are...
This keeps happening to me.
I have 3. I'll show you pictures later.
Another gaming cliche, Lloyd.
So again, also, pandemic, online, only know screen names, never meet anyone in person. This is the most people I've seen in a long time. Hi. So 2 people, 1 handle, 1 name. UB Coates is a disability activist, specifically for visual impairment, who works in Scotland as, I know UB initially from the huge push from them for alt texting your images on Twitter, because if you don't, then people who use screen readers cannot access anything you're doing. Like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. Image. Wow, this is incredible. We reached our goal. Image. If you're lucky, or otherwise it'll just skip straight over it if you're using a screen reader. But But yeah, so UV Coats for visual accessibility and sort of the work they're doing is incredible. And then going a bit further afield, their handle is Momotoes, which is interesting. But yes, Momotoes works with the large movement known as RPGC, or Southeast Asian role-playing games. And they have, I think she has the most incredible guides on making beautiful books, and you wouldn't believe it, Google Slides. So accessibility, not just in terms of like seeing yourself in a space, but also accessibility in terms of the tools you can access, which often is related to sort of where you are in the world, your economic status, you know, what sort of provisions have been provided to you. Like, a lot of people can get access to like InDesign and Photoshop through like university courses and stuff, but if you're not in those sorts of spaces, you can afford that, what tools have you got available to you for free? So yeah, Momotoes is doing some really great work, and like professional level, like award winning. I'm not just saying like, oh, it's great. No, like literally winning like Ennies and Diana Jones Award and all sorts of really cool stuff. So yeah, but also to tag onto all of that, I think a really good thing is not to the word was in my head, but basically not to put anyone on a pedestal too much. To be like, these are cool people, but also at the end of the day, they're just people who have Twitter. They have good things to say, and we should signal boost them, but don't like make them into the next messiah, because they're never going to live up to your expectations in the same way that like we don't live up to each other's expectations. We're humans, and we say dumb things, and that's okay, and we should be a bit forgiving with each other.
Tiny addendum. If anyone thinks that Google Slides is a hilarious way to lay out books, we do it in Cubicle 7 all the time when we're doing when you're doing an outline. So like step 1 of how does a book look, drop into Google Slides, because half of the team don't have like really detailed design stuff and everything.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know that if you're looking at a finished like book or whatever. And yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about accessibility to tools and class, and how again, if you're not having people from lower income households, if they don't have, or if they don't feel, or they don't have access to the tools to make things, then you're shutting out an entire voice from thing. Anyway, sorry. So minor addendums.
Yeah.
So Google Slides, very good. Use it all the time.
I stand Cubicle 7 so hard.
They're okay. That's not much.
Where
Keeping them balanced.
They're okay.
Yeah, keep
You
it
got one
balanced. No
book.
messiahs.
You got one. That's it. Side note, in case y'all didn't know about it, in Gen Con there was a BIPOC room which was dedicated to people of color and of all types, for going in, relaxing, and speaking to other people of color in the industry. It was a really cool mix up. I mean, don't Google it though, because you'll find some people you don't want to talk about. Just talking about it's not okay. But Rose Gauntlet Entertainment organized and got that down. I hope it's Rose Gauntlet, I'm not getting this wrong. And I thought it was one of the coolest and most greatest ideas I'd ever seen at Gen Con. And I thought I'd just shout them out for that. I can't give any more information because I'm just coming from third hand. I was in the room, but I never met them. But I thought I'd just shout it out for that one.
And that's a perfect example of make the space and let them fill it. Let the people the spaces fill the space, and you can almost guarantee that if you do that, anything that comes out of that space will enrich everything around it. It's an easy win, and well done to them, definitely. I saw it advertised.
Oh, it was great, wasn't it?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Gen Con. Dave did.
We know, we met him. It was great. What
He
a great time.
He reminds
We had
me
cake.
regularly.
It was delicious. You were missing out. Sorry, any more questions?
We'll start with the person in the red t-shirt, the volunteer t-shirt.
Hi. Firstly, I would like to give another recommendation for D&D Twitter people. Jennifer Kretschmer. Yeah, she's great. If you go onto her Twitter, which is DreamWisp, you will see like the thing she's got pinned to the top of her feed is the like role-playing game accessibility Bible. Like, it's genuinely great. I have 2 words that will form a question to you guys. Safety tools.
Necessary in all circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. In fact, we have safety tools in the RPG rooms. We've got X cards on the tables. Day 1, we started planning this all those years ago. It was second or third thing on the list. It was like, what RPGs we're running, who are the DMs, what are the safety tools? At the very least, the first thing we said was X cards, and then we've got Dave looks after the RPGs, has a very thorough set of rules that he expects behaviour-wise from DMs and how they manage the safety of their players. But from our viewpoint as a convention, if you're not willing to play with our safety tools at a minimum, you're not welcome. Simple as that. It's necessary. There's no circumstance where I don't think you should ever have, at a minimum, a basic level of safety for all your players.
I mean, if I'm gonna jump on that, safety tools is a great subject. I am ready. Okay, let's go for this. All right, this is Lloyd's 3 minutes of safety tools. Okay, 1, lines and veils, fantastic, we love them. 2, scripting, incredible. If you don't know what scripting is or lines and veils, here's a summary. Line, this is something that I don't want to see in the game. Veil, I don't mind it being in the game, but let's just make it too much of a big deal. You know, let's try not focus on it. Simplest thing ever. You just ask your players, do you want a line? Do you want a veil? Tell us what you want. We'll write it down. We won't put it in the game. It's the easiest thing and costs everyone nothing, literally nothing. It can be any subject. You can put it down and we know what's going on. There are so many people who just do not understand why that's important. And it's incredible how many games I play. People are like, well, I don't really understand why you have safety tools. And I'm like, well, if you don't want a game, just walk away. I'm like, well, what if you don't have that option? What if you're at a con? What if you don't know if that is an option? What if you're incredibly shy? What about all these other problems that come in? 2, if you're doing your safety tools, tailor them to the game that you're playing. Some games are going to need a little bit more than just, oh, let's just tap an X card and go home. Like, you're like, no, we need to establish right now, if we're playing a vampire game, what I am not okay with seeing. And side note, don't play vampire. That's a future subject. I need to know exactly what I don't want to be seeing and what I'm not okay with, because I do not want to go into that game with a whole bunch of strangers and they're talking some nonsense, and I'm like, I'm not okay with this. Easiest thing in the world. Do you know how easy people can put racism in the game and think it's okay? And you're like, I don't think it's okay. And they will never ask you. They'll just do it. They'll just do it. And then you're like, hey, actually, I'm not comfortable with that. Can we take it back? I've had to rewind scenes with people and gone, actually, can we just erase that bit in there? I know what you're trying to go, because you're trying to be historically accurate. But if you could just like not for 5 minutes, then it's down for that. 3, safety tools are something that every goddamn role-playing book should just put in. It's a single paragraph and it reminds people. And people who read it and don't like safety tools will stop reading your books. It doesn't want to run your games. Everybody wins. Like, who falls for this? Sorry, I ranted for a bit. Carry on. Okay, done.
3 minutes on the button.
I'm a professional, baby.
Broadcast experience.
It's hard to follow up that because he's right. You put it in the book. I mean,
I'm just getting flashbacks to what is an RPG discourse on Twitter, and whether you should have a paragraph on what an RPG is at the beginning of your book, and that's a form of accessibility for people who've not played your game. But if you're not writing a game for people who've not played RPGs, oh my god, I think the best way for accessibility actually is just to get off of just cancel Twitter, no talking, only playing games. But about safety tools, they're just another way of humans talking to humans about what we do and don't want to do, and that's what they are at the end of the day. Yeah, they're essential.
I think especially, again, if it's rolling back to the idea of trying to have more diverse individuals playing your games, engaging in them and whatnot, a lot of the time, if you've got someone who's running a game and they're not from certain marginalized groups, they're not going to know, something completely innocuous to them might be incredibly upsetting, triggering. Perfect example if we want to talk about vampire.
Don't play vampire.
I've played vampire a couple of times. I do not like when people go into extreme details of, and then I follow her from the club and I stalk her down an alley. That is horrible. That is not good.
But I'm a monster.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's pivotal to the experience of being an edgy midnight stalker of the night. And it's like, fade to black, people. Come on, just do something. I can't. You'd be hard pressed to find many women nowadays who haven't experienced something like that growing up or whatever. And it's these sorts of things are just you gotta. Yeah. So lines and veils.
I've never played vampire. Never played it. No. I'm like, why be a vampire where you can be an 11-foot tall tree?
Admittedly, yeah.
Yes, right.
That's fine.
I believe there was a question at the back there as well. Yeah. Sorry, did you have a second question?
Not really, but if anyone wants to check out the Tabletop Role-Playing Game Safety Toolkit, just plug that phrase into Google. It's totally great.
Awesome, thank you.
Sorry, this might be a little disjointed because I didn't think of this in advance, but it was something I thought of when you said at the start that you'll take anyone's money.
I like the impression you think I thought of this in advance.
Effectively, my question is, what are your thoughts on exclusion as a method of making things more inclusive? I'm thinking, I come from a LARP background from running LARP for thousands of players, and what we frequently have is we have people who will not change and will not obey our rules, and I imagine most people have met those people who think that that the R word is funny, and it doesn't matter whether you're thinking of the 4-letter R word or the 6-letter R word. They frequently think they're both funny, or who just will not take a telling and will keep on. What are your thoughts on excluding those people to make other people feel that your game is more for them?
I'm definitely letting the panel answer that question before I say anything, because I will cause Josh an absolute nightmare if I answer.
I'm giving up at this point.
Sorry, Josh.
I feel I cannot answer this question fairly because I have a very zero tolerance policy when it comes to certain things. I run games on demand at UK Games Expo and Gen Con. And if someone, and I've had to do it once, if someone has come up and has even given me the smallest type, I have a very zero tolerance policy. If you are popping the R word like it's nobody's business, I will kick you out. I do not care what other people do because I want to make my space inclusive to everyone else. And you not being there, if you're not there and your friends are trying to solidarity you and not be there too, they can also piss off. And I don't feel like I have a nuanced way of dealing with that, so I'm going to leave that to the rest of the panelists.
Well, I would say it's always the context of the situation and what it achieves. So yeah, I agree with you. Zero tolerance with adults. With grown adults, we know what harm is. For example, like if I'm running a game for a group of kids and one of them makes a dumb joke that is dumb, I know, well, they're kids. They've clearly picked this up from somewhere. This is an opportunity to educate them. But also, there's nuance in all sorts of daily life. Like, do I have the energy to educate someone? Do I have the time to be like, is this a situation I can salvage, or can I explain this? Or like, do I nix this right now? It's just complicated. But it is a tool, and I think it's useful. Excluding people is something that needs to happen in situations, but there's no like golden example of like, oh, always do it here. Because it's always a choice you make with the full context of the situation. It's never like, oh, you said one word, get out. You're dead to me. It's never as clear as that. Because there's always nuance, but there are situations where it truly does happen, and I fully approve of it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Normally, I'm always willing to try to lead with kindness, and if somebody says something, there's a chance that they're just naive and they think it's chill. If you point out to them, this is harmful, you're being a dick, and they still seem unrepentant or they try to talk back or whatever, if they don't have the basic empathy to be able to say, shit, I hurt someone's feelings, I'm sorry, you don't want them in your group anyway. Second point, it's always morally acceptable to punch Nazis. Okay, that's like we can agree there. Okay, cool, good.
Required in all circumstances.
I'd also add that exclusion is not just a method of like keeping a space accessible for other people. It can also be a self-defense tool. Like if something triggers you and you're like, oh damn, this makes me feel awful, you can be like, okay, I don't care where you're coming from by saying this. Get out. I can't handle that, and I'm the one running the space, and I get to say, I'm not cool with that. And they can be afterwards like, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't know. But you can be like, look, I don't care. It made me feel crap at the time. We can figure it out later, but right now you've got to go. And that's also okay. It can not just be, for other people. Accessibility is for you as well.
Embrace the power you have as a LARP runner and abuse it to kick those people out. I'm just saying. Just get drunk on that power. Sorry.
Is it abuse though?
No.
The words that we use have power. Says the writer.
Make use of the facilities you have. From our viewpoint, from Tabletop Scotland viewpoint, we are actually, I think, quite lucky in the sense that in the 3 years we've held the event, and unfortunately the 2-year gap where we haven't, there has been precisely one situation where we've had to go down that exclusion path. Thankfully, that person signposted well in advance that they were in fact, sorry Josh, a piece of crap, right? And we sold them the ticket. They saw the code of behaviour and the required behaviour we expect of all our attendees and exhibitors. They arrived, they did exactly what we thought they might do. Quiet words were had. It was made clear either you stay and behave or you go. They opted to go. Thankfully, I don't have to reveal where the body is buried. But we've had one, and I think that's coming back to the fact that we are relatively lucky in that the vast majority of people just want to be with like-minded people. They want to be with people they share something with, this hobby, this industry, have fun. And for the main part, that's a good enough, big enough reason that they're willing to live and let live and be accommodating and be accepting of others. And those people that aren't, sometimes just punch them at. Punch them. There's no harm. Just remember, thumb outside.
Please don't take that advice on context. Please don't go punching extra physical. Like, use a stick. It's easy.
I'm telling
So
you,
don't hurt your
swords.
hands. Don't hurt your hands.
Swords.
Also,
Swords.
don't hurt your hands, please. Thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? Hello, yes. Oh, gentleman, sorry, person at the back there, and then yourself.
Mementos is also a brilliant person. Hi, I'm Andrew from Geek Native, and I've been sitting on this question for a while, but it feels appropriately sort of contextual. So this is about getting the right people into your game. A question and a cry for help. Is there a better phrase than and thoughts on positive discrimination?
Could you give like a little more context to that question?
So
Just go like 5 words further.
So positive discrimination comes from, I think, recruiting people. When you proactively try and get a more diverse workforce by saying, right, I need some more women in the company because it's, and hence it is positive, but some people would argue discrimination and it's become a bit pejorative, a bit toxic. You can see the wrong people use it. And there's definitely a school of thought to say, actually, as somebody organising a game or a LARP, you should make the same effort to get a diverse group. The phrase, for example, hard to reach is banned by the Scottish Government in marketing because that kind of blames communities for being awkward. Actually, it's still them heard. You have to make the effort. But is this appropriate in role-playing, tabletop games? And I guess if you hadn't heard the phrase, you haven't had time to think about a better alternative. But just thoughts on that.
There's a lot to unpack in the concept. Like, I would, up front, my gut would say it's always morally correct to try and bring marginalized people and actively seek out marginalized individuals, because you're enriching, whether if you're writing something, if you're running something or whatever, if you're actively seeking marginalized voices to try and integrate into your whatever, it's good. That's great. But I've also heard of stories where someone will show up to a game store and say, I want to run a game, but I only want to run a game for women. And sometimes, it's a guy in that position, and you have to raise an eyebrow and be like, what is, I think it comes down to intention. Why are you seeking a specific marginalized group? Because there's also the kind of crappy situation where, I'm specifically looking for marginalized groups to exploit them, etc. So it's definitely, there's a lot to unpack in it. It all comes down to intention and how you go about it. If it's say you're doing a recruiting call, and you're like, hey, I'm looking for players, I'm looking for whatever, and you flag that you are especially interested / happy to accommodate marginalized individuals. That some people would argue that that's positive discrimination, because you're actively flagging that. But to me, that's more just raising a flag and saying you are welcome here. And again, this might, I can only speak from my own experience. I live in Scotland, 96% white. So to me, I would see absolutely no problem in that. But I could see some people. It's a complex one. I'm rambling, so I'm going to pass.
Any thoughts?
I have never actually had to actively recruit people in trying to get that in, because I always make it very clear that I am looking for a very diverse group, and that always causes me problems when it comes to recruiting for things like that. I always get people saying, Lloyd, why are you not looking for the best person why are you not why are you looking for people of color or people like that? Don't you qualify for that? So you don't need more? I have had this before. It's painful. I hate it. My life sucks.
So I would come back and that would say, how would I know that person's the best person until I've role played with them for 10 hours? You don't know. I mean, until you've actually sat down at a table or a game with somebody, how do you know what somebody's skill is? How do you know who's going to do the best? I mean, I am a terrible role player. Don't ask me to do anything in character. As a DM, I can't do anything in character. I can't do voices. All my characters have the worst names ever. I'm terrible at that. But when it comes to actually playing, I try to be as often as possible. I love playing with people who can act their characters. Don't ask me to do it. That's the best person for that. I'm the worst person for that. That's the best person for that. So for me, the best way of doing that is, again, it comes down to, if you're making a space, make it available. The gaming group I'm part of in Dunfermline, we meet on a Friday night between 6 and 9. Now, for some people, Friday nights are horrendous, right? Because Friday night is a particularly busy night in certain industries that is not the case in 9 to 5 office work. So it might be the case that you have to say, well, is the audience I'm trying to make my game available to, or my environment available to, is there any point in doing it on a Friday night at 9 o'clock when actually I should be doing it on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock? So probably you have to actually go out and ask that question to the people, say to them, what would make you want to join in? What would encourage you to be a participant and cater to those needs? Terrible Field of Dreams moment, build it, they will come.
Basically, what I'm saying, Mr. Geek Native Guy, is put it in the description. Just do it. Yeah. Trust. Let's just believe in yourself. Yeah. You get some flack for it, don't get over it.
I'd also add on to Elaine's point of intention. Intention can also come from a good place, but with bad impact. If you pity someone, I want some diversity in my group. That's a horrible place to come from, because we're all people and we all want to be involved, but we don't want to be involved at pitying. You don't want to be like the younger brother at the party, the little 10-year-old playing. Oh yeah, he can roll some dice sometime. That's not fun. And it's not fun if we did something to really help you out. Is that okay? You don't want to be spoken to like that. So do it because you want the people there, and do it because you honestly want the people there. However you do it, it'll probably be fine, so long as the intention, as Elaine said, is good.
Yeah. And there was one more question. So
there were three more questions. All right, speed run. Let's go. All questions answered in 3 minutes. Go. Run.
We've got 8 minutes left. We can do at least three. At least three.
Two. We could do three.
Let's just speak really fast.
Easy.
As I'm a publisher, and I've had no trouble at all finding women writers, gay, straight, whole spectrum writers, sexuality, gender, the whole lot. But where do I find people of colour to write for me? Scotland, 96% white.
Yeah, don't come against Scotland.
Yeah, well, we've been here since 1992, and we've had no problem at all finding anyone apart from people of colour. We tried Chris Spivey, who's a big fan of our game. We said, hey, do you want to write for us? He says, no, I'm too busy fighting my own battles. So he didn't have time to work for us. So how can we attract writers like that when we want to broaden our voice? We know we sound particularly British and white. There's no way around that at the moment.
Got to take on new talent. I mean, this is coming from the art student who couldn't find any properly professionally paid work for 3 years because I didn't have professional experience, and I couldn't get professional experience because I didn't have professional experience. If you want to involve people, that takes an additional piece of legwork, and admitting that sometimes they might do not as great a job because they haven't had as many chances. And so taking a little bit of extra time to mentor, being like, oh, okay, there's lots of spelling mistakes in this draft you submitted. Cool, the editor will fix that. Or I don't like the way this rule is phrased. Can we work a way to make it more condensed, but give them the chance to kind of work and stuff like that. Call outs on social media can really help as well. Sending it out to publications that you approve, that you could get that reach for. You hey, we're looking for someone. It's a paid position. It's professional. It's not exploitative. It's not we're going to pay you less because you don't have experience.
So
the same rate you do everyone else.
There's a very definite magic word in there. Paid position. Can't stress that enough. Has to be that.
And you're not going to find your unicorn. You're not going to find some magical writer who's that ethnicity that you've not found before, who's got 50 years experience, because they haven't had the opportunities, which is the definition of not having access to the industry. But yeah, you've got to be the one to put the work out there, and you've got to admit that you're not going to find everything that you need. But yeah, I lost my train of thought. But there we go. Yeah.
I think there's definitely there's like two areas you're looking for. If you're specifically looking for hiring, you need to you do need to be fairly accepting of if you're hiring for in-person studio office work or whatever, you are going to be limited by the demographics in the country you're in. It's not a moral failing if you start a company in Scotland and you cannot find any people of color to work on your in your studio, just on account of like the percentages are so small. If you are much more open to remote working and whatnot, you can absolutely cast a wider net. And a lot of the time you can find that things like brain blanking, like pay and everything, can vary quite wildly, massively differently when you start working with remote work. I am a firm believer that remote work is the future, and that it opens more doors, it opens more opportunities and whatnot. So I hope that as time goes on and offices continue to become more remote and everything, we can start to see more diverse teams coming together. But yeah, so it is definitely a hard one where if you are looking for physical places, you can sometimes just be limited, and it's not inherently a moral failing, especially if you're aware of it. You can be honest, especially in even like social media or whatever. Like, no one's gonna like throw shade at you or whatever. If someone's like, "Yo, you're all white," and you're like, "I live in a freaking hella white country, my dude," like and we can't work remote, like, or whatever. It's as long as you're still putting some of the effort in and you're trying, like, be aware of it. Don't lose sleep over it would be, I guess, my argument. Yeah. That's fine.
Question over there. There's two over there, I think.
We'll get to you eventually. I've seen you. I know you're here. I got you, homie. I got you.
Hi there. I know we were just saying that obviously everyone needs to get paid. At the other end, we want to be welcoming everyone into the hobby, and there's lots of people that maybe can't afford to be buying special dice or £60 rule books, several supplements. Is there more that can be done from like a designer perspective, or like running conventions and things to help with economic accessibility that's not currently being done?
Just stop the trend of foil on your book covers. It doubles the cost of the book. It's so stupid. I hate foil on books. Okay.
I want money.
But like, you could sell more to more people because it'd be cheaper. Total side note, but yeah.
There are incentives that's been going around. There's a community buy-in. Is community buy-in they use on itch.io? I can't remember exactly what it is.
Community copy.
Thanks, stuff. Community copies, which are giving out for every copy you buy. They give out a copy to someone who could possibly need it. PDF versions of things being much cheaper to go out there. There's a lot of incentives companies can do to make their games more accessible to people. Maybe making it so the book doesn't cost a fortune when you're buying it is also a really good one. I gotta be on your site for this one. No, it is. But there are multiple ways of bringing it up so people can get it. Honestly, giving away your books that you don't need is also a really good one to charity. A charity will gladly take them in and spin them around. There's a lovely charity in Uganda, which I can't remember the freaking name of right now, that people can send their role-playing stuff to, and they basically teach role-playing games to kids in Uganda. And I can't remember the name of the charity right now, and I'm really annoyed by it. Becky's going to kill me later, but it's really cool. I really
Josh, can you find that for the show notes?
Yes, I will find that charity for the show notes.
could you insert the part where I say it right here?
Yes, I will do my... I'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Do not do an impression, Josh.
No.
Oh, sorry. don't do an impression, please, God. Yeah, next question. Go.
There's also
Wait. Sorry, I was wrong.
The other thing I was just going to say is also Free RPG Day. Very good.
Yeah.
If you are a publisher and you are, especially if you're doing like trad publishing, like big ass friggin' D&D style books or whatever, get in on Free RPG Day. You can do a cut down version of your rules, little adventure, kick it out there. Not only is it good for you because it gets more people out there, but again, folk who cannot afford to drop 60 quid on your big hardback, like, killer book, they can get in on it, they can try it out and stuff. There's definitely lots of incentives out there. And also trying, I feel like there's like an artisanal hobby aspect of it where some people believe that to play D&D correctly, you need to have a wormwood table and freaking dice cut from the marble of God or whatever and all this sort of stuff. When really, at the end of the day, a bunch of your friends can gather around a table with some sticky notes, a single pencil, a single set of dice, and like a $2 game from itch.io, and you can have fun. We need to be making sure that we're balancing our desires as publishers, as developers, because we want to get paid. So, we still need to be producing content that's making money, but we need to also make sure that we're stepping back and saying, you don't need the limited edition version of the book. It's if you can afford it, great, but absolutely never look down on someone for it, because I've absolutely seen that in games of the past where a person will join the game and they have like some, I don't know, dice from like a board game or whatever that they've brought along, and they're, it's a set of polyhedrals, it still works, but yet they're sitting next to Tim who spent $200 on bespoke Kickstarter dice or whatever, and they'll turn around and be like, it's torn up, and it's like, hey, my dude, do not. So it's like a little self-regulatory thing as well, just a cultural thing. You do not need all the expensive guns to play role-playing games.
And our last question.
Before you say that, the thing was called the Butterfly Project. I got it now. Just insert that in there. The Butterfly Project.
We'll work it out. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay.
That's great.
So I don't remember who it was in the panel. We were talking a bit before about how hard and ridiculous it is to find examples of real-world planet Earth diversity in fictional realms where we're chucking around fireballs and dragons and so forth. So I'm quite a believer in. Was it yourself?
Hi.
Sorry,
It's Lloyd.
Sorry.
Hi, it's me. Hi.
I'm quite a believer in like positive examples of role models and things, particularly in fictitious worlds. So has anyone on the panel found any particularly good board games, RPGs that do a really good job of bringing forward types of diversity that you happen to think are important?
I prefer the game. I will confess, I prefer games that have almost nothing to do with the real world whatsoever. I'm the worst example. I would much rather play Soulbound by Cubicle 7 than anything that even touches the real world.
That is such a plug.
I know.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
It's me. But as an example, it's high fantasy. It's fantasy. There's very little, from my viewpoint, very little real world grounding in that, and that's the way I love it. That's the reason I love that game. Whereas there's other games where you can go be miserable in the mud if you want.
Lloyd, you mentioned how inspiring it was to see a person of colour on a role-playing game.
Yes.
Stuff like that. Are there any games that you found particularly good for this, so that we might go and buy them and play them with a show?
Thirsty sword lesbians. Okay, question answered. Next question.
Swords.
Oh my God, no swords. Thirsty Sword Lesbians was really, really, really good. I was so impressed with that book. I was not expecting anything. I went that book with an open mind, and I came out glorious. Such a great book. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna beat my brains off. It's hot. I'm tired.
Carrion Crow is a fantastic one, but I feel like that's kind of cheating because Rachel's Haunted West was really great. I really love it when people go out of their way to try and represent a lot of people within the books. Actually, I'm going to throw in Star Trek Adventures, but I feel like that's cheating.
Actually, jumped in my head there. Non-role-playing example, the board game Holy, I can never say it. It's about Hindu colour festival. I punched it for the board game library, and then sat and looked at it for 2 hours and went. And then I spent like an hour and a half on a wiki troll. And then a week later, it arrived, having bought it, unboxed it again, played it, and now I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And I'm just blown away by it. And I knew nothing about that subject before now, and now I've fallen in love with it, and I'm like, this is just amazing. Simply by being a bright, beautifully colourful box full of beautifully components that's around the theme of a subject that is so far removed from my reality that I'm just like, wow. And I'm literally 20% battery gone, like, oh.
I think for myself, a couple that jumped to mind immediately that I've seen recently, and this is entirely because I was doing a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse research. Masks, very nice. Anything that shows like a bunch of like superheroes being awesome, but those superheroes also being like a cool, diverse team, good. Monster Hearts as well, a bit of an older one at this point, but there's a lot of queer representation and everything in there. It's very nice. Yeah, it's an interesting one sometimes because a lot of the time you are limited in the amount of like direct named character representation you can do in role-playing games because they're not fiction. They're not, you know, you don't necessarily have big narratives and stories and showing people overcome struggles with characters because normally you're presenting players with a sandbox and you'll present some character archetypes, character art and whatnot, which is ideally like representative of like a broad range. But yeah, you can sometimes get with like adventure modules and everything as well. If I have to read another adventure module where all of the villains are queer people, I'm going to rip my eyes out. Disney has a lot to answer for, is all I'm saying. We love it, and yet we hate to see it. But then we'll love to see it. We kind of hate to see it. So, yeah. Yeah, so it's an interesting one where like individual, sometimes it just comes down to like, you know, flicking through the book and be like, oh man, all these awesome characters. Yeah.
The gender list in Sleepaway, which was I think Jay Dragon's thing before, one that is absurdly good, but like the gender might be like flannel lesbian, or it might be cat dad. And it's just none of them are just anything that you typically set out. It's amazing.
Another form. So I have thought of one now. My brain is cooking.
I believe in you.
But it's Brindlewood Bay. It's the first time I've seen old little nannies. You don't see old people in role-playing games. That's another form of accessibility of like, we're all gonna get there one day. We have
Wait,
to...
we are?
Oh god.
Oh god.
Plastic surgery and Botox.
But
yeah, we don't see old people in role-playing games. Or if we do, they're sort of like this Yoda-like sage figure, and it's nice to be able to...
Or witches.
Oh,
All old ladies are witches, don't you know?
Hags. Like, there are tropes that are fun, but they're not empowering. And it's nice to have a game where you play as old people and they get to go up to mysteries and have adventures. Because, you know, a lot of our current Scottish white culture kind of frames old people, I don't know, not favourably. You've got still game and that's it. And even then, the stuff they get up to, you're a bit like, is that what I got to look forward to?
Yes, even then.
Can we make still game the RPG a thing, please?
I'm sure there'd be a license for it. So I think we've actually gone slightly over, but that's fine. I believe we've successfully managed to not answer the question.
But
Wait, what? I tried.
But
I'm sorry.
I think it's fair to say that that's because there is no one answer to the question, and actually the only answer there really could be is that we all have to put the work in. You know, do the work. Ask the question is the important bit. Once you've asked the question, that's the way we're going to figure it out. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panel, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the convention. And I look forward to seeing you all next year.
we applaud ourselves? Is that
Yeah.